I'm really interested, where are your rules?
It's interesting, as when you ask this question, I have an image that comes to my mind. And I think I haven't remembered this image for a long time. I don't know how old I must have been. I must have been something like 4, 5, 6, something like that. And I see myself in a house that we used to live in Israel. And I'm sitting in a car, in a little imaginary car. And I have a friend with me. He's an intimate friend. His name is David. This is just like a flash of image that came when you asked this question. And I think that the roots of my storytelling to be found in the very, very rich, imaginative world that I inhabited when I was a child. I spoke to many things, objects, animals, plants, hills. They spoke back to me. And the good thing about being a child is that nobody thinks that you're crazy, but it's a normal thing that you just go around speaking out loud and having imaginary tea parties and festivals and theater plays and things like that. So I had a very, very rich world. And obviously, as I grew up, it changed and it socialized into something else. But it's always stayed with me, this rich world. And at some point, I arrived to, my later life, in my more adult life, I arrived to do the work of earth energy. So it's called geomancy in certain parts of the world. It's it's work to do with landscapes, mapping the earth energies in these landscapes, springs, energy powers, and power points, sacred sites, things like that. So I arrived to work with this world, and again, things spoke to me, mountains, rivers, trees continued speaking to me in similar ways that they did as a child, through my imagination, through images, through pictures. And I remember one day I came to my friend and colleague Roy, and I said, when I do this work, I have so many stories. I see so many stories. I hear so many stories from the landscape, from the memory that the landscape carries of things that used to happen there or such things. And he said, and I said, I don't know how to speak about these things. It's so, out of this world in some ways that I don't know how to speak about it properly. And he suggested that I speak about it with stories. And so that was a way to reconnect with the world of stories that I had very, very alive in me as a kid. And if we ask about roots, I think these are the roots.
Are there any other elements?
Lots and lots. Let me see if I can start to name them. I think that one of the things that attract me a lot is that storytelling offers us a way to think differently. So in a way, it opens us into the possibility of thinking in pictures, thinking in images, processing thoughts, emotions, ideas in picture form, because when you hear a story, you're really receiving images, imaginations, and they're strung together in a different kind of syntax, in a different kind of grammar than the kind of grammar you receive through abstract thinking. So it connects us to a more, I'm going to say the word primitive, but then I want to say something else about the primitive, but it connects us to a more primitive way of thinking. But saying that, I want to also to say that we have a kind of divide, a great divide that separates what we call modernity to primitive societies, shall we say, or pre-modern societies. And I think that's a very kind of erroneous chasm, a very erroneous divide, really. But we still have that, and I think that storytelling helps us to remember that's not the case, that abstract thinking and picture thinking and heart thinking and world thinking, they're all together. They're all the same. It offers us a way to speak to one another.
Karmit, where do you use storytelling in your life, in your community?
Yeah, I use it a lot with, I would say, in a healing context. So I'll describe to you two sort of areas where I use storytelling. One is when I work with people one-to-one. I do healing sessions or mentoring sessions, or so coaching sessions. And in these situations, it's based in energy work, what I do. So it's shamanic energy work, and I work with a person, and I'll often receive an image or a storyline or something that from the imagination that I can give back to the person. I really don't try to analyze it or to understand it myself, because it's really a gift for the other person, and it usually means something for the other person deeply. Or the other person, when we work together, the client will receive images, and then we will talk about them, and we'll sort of see, well, where does this image take you? What does it move inside of you, and how does that shift perhaps a way of being or a way of thinking in you? So I use that a lot with people. Sometimes I prescribe stories. So sometimes I prescribe traditional stories, and other times we'll just work with these images to help with the work. So this is one area, and then another area that is I use a lot the stories is in the earth energy work. So I call lots of gatherings here in the south. I live in the south of Spain, and it'd be about once a month or once every few months we gather in different parts of the area around here. There's some sacred sites nearby, and sometimes we go to just different parts that feel like they might need a bit of attention or our engagement with it. So I call people, we do some listening to the land, and we come up with images and stories. The land, in a way, speaks to us and wants us to hear. So this is, again, it's kind of a stringing together images in the context of healing, in the context of rebuilding relationships with our greater community, with our more than human community area that I use storytelling in.
Tell us more about the Emerson College, because for me it's a special place.
Yes, for me too, and for many, many people it's a special place. So I have the great fortune to go to Emerson College for 3 months a year to run together with Roy Galor the 3-month storytelling course there, and together with many other wonderful teachers. And it's a course where we work with different story types, with personal stories, with folk tales, with myths, wonder tales. So we really sort of explore and taste many different types of stories, and each person gets a chance to explore their connection to the world of stories, their interests, how they might want to apply what they're learning in the world, in whatever area they're passionate about. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful course. And I think it's very transformative. I know it is, people come and the fact that we get to spend 3 months together and let the stories guide us and work with us and work upon us, it is a really transformative journey.
I'm very curious, how do you get to stories?
I would say that the thing I love most is to hear stories and follow them. But of course, I don't get to hear that many people tell stories, or traditional stories, that is. So of course I go after them in books. And I have to say that I have to read lots of stories until one grabs me. It's really like, a bit like a lover. You sort of, the right story that you're going to fall in love with is not, they don't come in fast and thick. You have to find them and have to wait patiently for one to find you, or for you to find it. So I read a lot of stories, and until I find one that is just right. And sometimes, of course, then I read a story that I've already read before, and suddenly it does grab me, whereas it didn't before. It's very much related to the moment and what my current inquiry is about, what I'm working with in my art practice at the moment, so it depends. But I know, on the website, on the internet, there's millions of sites, and you can find anything you want on the internet. But I really, really love story collection books. I have a library of, I like to buy some, and like, oh yes, stories from this area of the world and from that area of the world, and then I read through them, and then I find some. I'm here, this area that I was speaking about, that where I live, I'm very, very curious about its stories, and what I find here in terms of mythology and sort of pre Phoenician mythology, because that is still very present. Phoenicians were here, then the Romans, and so that the gods and goddesses of their times are present in different sites. But the Tartessian ones, the pre-Phoenician ones, we have names, but we don't have so many stories. There's some stories and some story snippets. So what I like to do is to gather some threads of what we do have of these ancient gods and goddesses, and try to, I would say the word try to unearth their stories. I'm very interested in that.
How is the situation of storytelling around you?
I'll start with the wider area. It was in Spain in general. In Spain in general, there is an association of storytellers. It's called AEDA, Narración Oral. And it's quite a strong association. There are lots of people part of it and practicing it, and there's festivals. So I would say in general in Spain, there's a scene. I live in and as I said, in the southern tip, in a rural area. Culture is not so hugely developed around here in general. So also storytelling, I would say, isn't either. I know one or two people who dabble in it. It's not hugely developed around here. And every time I do something, people are thirsty for more. So I do get I get the sense that people want it and would love to have more, and they're asking me also for training. And so I was speaking to some people around here about doing some actual storytelling workshops so that people start telling. And I've actually started telling in Spanish, which is my Spanish is quite good, but I've always considered it not good enough for telling, because with telling you want to have the words and the language at the tip of your sleeve, you know, just kind of be able to improvise. And my Spanish isn't that good, but I end up what happens in the end is that my body tells the story, and my facial expressions, you know, so they participate much more even than the words.
Wow.
And then I get the impression that it works. So I have a feeling that it doesn't matter with language skills. Just do it and just get people interested and involved, and it will just happen. I think it's a contagious thing. You just need to start, and people respond so warmly to it that I just grow.
How was the last pandemic year for you? What did you learn?
Oh wow! What did I learn? I think is something is still in the unraveling and the discovering. Wow. So yes, of course, I learned that it's okay to be slow. I've always been a very slow person in the sense that I need a lot of time for reflection and consideration and creation. And this is, you know, has been a great opportunity to do just that. Actually been a very, very fortunate one in that sense that I've not suffered from it, and I was able to continue to work, but at the same time really slow down. So that has been a great, great gift. I think another gift has been that before the pandemic, I was very strongly and heavily into activism, and very specifically in sort of environmental activism. So, you know, using all my creative resources towards that. And there was something in the pandemic that made me understand that I want to direct my energies and effort in the same direction, but in a different way. So in a much more slow, underground, mycelial way, rather than fighting, you know, this sort of outward activism seems somehow senseless to me at this point, for me. And there's something much more inner and smaller. I would say that my understanding now is that the work that I need to be doing is in much more intimate spaces, in the folds of intimate circles, you know. And storytelling is part of that. You know, when you're sitting there with people and telling a story, there's something that is woven between the people who are there, and I feel like that's enough for me. That's this. If I do these events, these moments with people, that's the activism. That's what I need to be doing, and not so much worry about loudspeakers and, you know, websites and I don't know if you know what I mean, but yeah, it seems like that the pandemic has brought it much closer, that I return to a much smaller circle and work locally, much more locally here, with the people here, with the land here.
Is there any story, any character which lives in you now?
Yeah, this summer I've been, like, it was spring and summer, I've been diving into a lot of great serpents and dragon stories. So you can say that there's from the Greek mythology, there's the great serpent Delphine, which is also known as Python. She's quite alive in me now. And also, yeah, some serpents from Chinese folk tales, sort of slithering in my consciousness. Yeah, I've been there, and doing all sorts of work with people around here, with these stories. So yeah,
Okay, so we should leave this nice conversation with snakes and dragons. I like this image.
My children used to ask me when they were little if I could tell them a story from my mouth. And
Yeah.
by that they meant the telling and not the reading. And mommy,
Yeah.
can you tell us a story from your mouth? And for me, this is like an image of course, all stories, if you read, come from your mouth. But for me, this is really a picture of how when you tell a story rather than read it, you're embodying it. There's something about body awareness, body language, body presence that happens in the telling that isn't there somehow when you're reading. When you're reading and writing is already a technology. You asked earlier about the technology of this internet Zoom thing, and reading and writing is also a technology, and so it's like going pre reading and writing technology and just being rooted in the body. So